As much as I love books and as much as I love reading, there are quite a few books that I sort of regret reading, slash, I'm just so disappointed in, slash, just books I just don't rate. And therefore, it's like, what's the point, you know? Before I get into my list of books that I regret reading, and I regret reading for a whole host of reasons, don't forget to like and subscribe and tell us what books you regret reading in the comments. And consider becoming a Patreon as well. Link is in the description. So let's start off with Severance, which is the first book. Severance was, I certainly regret reading this, and I regret also my anticipation of this book. I thought it was going to be so much better than it actually turned out to be. I don't have a physical copy of this anymore. I don't have a physical copies of most of the books on this list. But and for good reason. I did want to keep them. I did want to keep them. I didn't want to keep Severance. When I was done, and here's the thing with these, when I was done with Severance, and I was just like, okay, that was that. And I had my critiques of it. And there is a video on this channel of my book review of it. The thing is that with the regret is that the books I read straight afterwards that I had delayed because of Severance, I can't read all the books that I want to read at the same time. Of course, no one can. And so if I'm reading a book, that means I'm not reading another book that I maybe considered reading. And around, I think after I finished Severance, that's when I read, I think, the rest of the Green Bone Saga by Fonda Lee. That's when I read Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. And it was just like, I read Battle Royale not long after, and those were just epic, epic books. And so sometimes I read those books afterwards, and then I think on Severance and books I regret reading, and I'm just like, why did I even waste my time with this when there was so much epic stuff? And I knew Golden Sun was gonna bang. I knew Green Bone Saga was gonna bang. I knew Battle Royale was going to bang. And so, I mean, it is what it is. It happens. Next up is a book I read recently that I have a review on this channel as well. And that's Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke. It's a classic science fiction book, and I regret it because, as you can see to my left, I have quite a few books in my SF Masterworks collection. I'm not like wanting to collect all 200 plus books. I just collect the ones I want to read. And I haven't read most of the books in that collection, in the collection I have, the SF Masterworks. And so the fact that I, took it upon myself to read Childhood's End before reading other books I want to read, and Childhood's End being a 1.5 star read was just like, okay, I definitely regret just reading this book. I should have picked another one that was on the SF Masterworks collection. I have so many there. I recently got Hyperion. I recently got The Left Hand of Darkness. I've got Ringworld there. I've got Ravindura Rama, Fighting Upon the Deep. All sorts that I really want to get to. So yeah, Childhood's End, definitely regret. Third book is another sci-fi classic and another one I have a review for, which I did recently, and that is Foundation by Isaac Asimov. Again, this is another regret. I have the series to the top right of me. I'm selling it. I am selling all those yellow ones. I am selling them. They look good, but I don't think I'm going to be continuing on with the series. This was such a letdown, and I regret it so much because this is considered like one of the best, if not the best series of all time. And the first book just isn't it. There were bright spots, but I'm just not feeling it whatsoever. And I don't have, and due to the first book, me giving it a 1.5 stars, I don't have faith in the rest of the series, and I just will not be continuing with it. And even though it could sit on my bookshelf and look pretty, and to be honest, it probably will for a while. It'll probably take me a while to shift those. They will be gone. I just gotta get rid of them. Just chalk up, just, hey, Foundation, not for me. Fourth book is another sci-fi, but we're kind of cracking on with some of the sci-fi here, even though I love the genre. and that is We Who Are About To by Joanna Russ, which is a novella. It's a very short read, and it is, you know what it is? It's because Bookfield rated it highly, and then I read it and I've just regretted it. It was just not a good book. I think maybe like 1 star, 1.5 star. I regret it because, again, it's like my feelings, my anticipation of what I was going to get was different from the reality, and therefore I regret my feelings about the book. And I won't lie, I read it from the first time I heard of it, from the time of the first time I heard of it to the time that I actually bought it and read it was actually quite short. And again, so it kind of like Severance, it skipped the line. And yeah, it shouldn't have. The Stand I regret reading. You know, initially with The Stand, again, I have a book review for this. What I regret about The Stand is that I initially DNF'd it. I first picked it up several years ago, read the first 300 pages, I want to say, 400 pages, and I was just like, you know what, I'm putting this down. Then I didn't get back into it until last year. And so there was quite a few years, like a gap in between. By the time I was finished with it, I was just like, mm, mm, was there, should I have done it? Should I have picked it back up again? Like I remembered where I was, even though it had been years since I read it. I remembered exactly what had happened. So it wasn't, I was able to just pick up the story and follow along just fine. But by the end of it, I was just like, yeah, well, you know, if I tried to force myself to finish the book when I initially picked it up, I would have probably given it a lower rating because I would have just, I think I would have just been hating my life. But it is what it is. It kind of reminds me, that book, The Stand and On the Beach by Neville Shute, are two books that I picked up, DNF'd, left on my shelf, and picked back up, both of them last year. And the Neville Shute one, the ending was just, it was absolutely beautiful. So that one was worth it. And I don't regret reading that book, even though I still rate it lowly. But The Stand, just the ending, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. It's over 1,000 pages. It's Stephen King at his, just doing Stephen King stuff, and it wasn't it. Moving on, we have next up Sharp Objects by, I think, is Gillian Flynn. Does it a crime, mystery, thriller type. Again, this is a genre that I'm just not big on. It's just not doing it for me. Sci-fi is doing it for me. Fantasy is definitely doing it for me. Everything outside of that is up in the air, like greatly, greatly up in the air. But we'll see. We'll see. Sharp Objects, which is a regret because again, I watched Gone Girl the movie and I actually really liked it, and I really wanted to see that suspense in this different story and just for it to just be epic. And again, it's loved, and I was just like, no, there's no point. And then because it's so popular, every time I actually see it pop up and like people talk about it, I have a feeling of regret about reading it because it's just not good. And that's the thing, and that's a wild thing as well. It's just like, I do feel that way about The Stand as well because a lot of people have The Stand as their like favorite or one of their favorite Stephen King books, and a lot of people have The Stand high up in their top whatever list of books, and I'm just like, no, 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 no. There's better out there. These next two were part of next three, I should say, were part of a book club read I had with some friends. And that is Where Sleeping Girls Lie, The Satsuma Complex, and Behind Her Eyes. All of which I very, very much regret reading. Mainly because I had a choice to just not read them, even though I'm part of the book club. But they just weren't worth it at all in any way, shape, or form. Behind Her Eyes is the biggest letdown because I actually had that on my TBR as well. Again, it's one of those thrillers that is a modern thriller, and not a thriller in the espionage sense, but the modern, sleek look, partly female rage type thrillers, the one that kind of really is, I don't know, it's quite modern and just not good. And so I regret it even more because actually the premise initially was good enough for me to put it on my TBR, and hated that book, hated that book. Where Stephen Goes Live was just a crappy YA mystery, sort of, would you say dark academia? You know, maybe some dark academia vibes here and there, but that wasn't the sell point for it. I don't think. And the Satsuma complex, the less we talk about that book, the better, to be honest with you. White Knights by Dostoevsky is on this list, and I regretted it again because I read it so quickly. Between the time I actually knew about the book, between the time I actually started reading it, again, it jumped the queue. It's a very short novella, if that is, it's a short story. And I gave it away. I was just like, this isn't it. This is just really, really, really not the one. What's his name? Jack Edwards was the one that convinced me. And that's when I realized that Jack Edwards and I have very vast different literary tastes. And that's when it's like we when it comes to like Normal People by Sally Rooney, we are aligned. But for the most part, he's I just realized he wasn't the person to go to for my book reviews, for my taste at least. So that was that. Then the last book on this list is The Strain, which is a sort of vampire murder thriller, murder mystery thriller about vampires that travel on this plane. And to be honest, I'm not explaining it. It was a bad book, very very episodic, very serialized, I think, which makes sense because the two authors that wrote it are literally TV writers. So, and I think this actually did get made into a TV show also, and it seems like the writing was purposely for that. And with that, because it was written like it wasn't written like an actual script. Like if you're an actor and you're reading a script, it wasn't written like that. It was written like a normal story, but there were so many gaps and such an absence of texture that essentially it was written for TV writers to then fill out and put on, the big screen. It wasn't a story that was full and textured and made to come to life in the literary sense. There was just a lot missing, and I regret reading it as well for some. And again, I regret my feeling of picking it up and reading it ahead of books I really want to read. That's really what I regret, and I regret because it was a vampire story, and I'm like, okay, let's get into a different kind of vampire story that's not Twilight or whatnot, and it didn't slap. And then at the same time, I'm an idiot because there's another vampire story that Jay Kristoff has written that I really want to get to. That's on my TBR, and I should have just read that because I actually am anticipating that more than I anticipated The Strain. And so again, with me and my regrets, it's just me being an idiot when when I um when I choose to read the books that I do. And at times, you can't read that, everyone. That's why being a mood reader is such a big thing because you just don't know what's gonna captivate you, right? And again, I'm like that also. But again, that leaves a lot of room for regret. So it is what it is. Anyway, guys, let me know in the comment sections books you regret, what books you regret buying, what books you regret reading. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, it really helps the channel. And consider becoming a Patreon. You get early access to videos, and also we are starting a book club there also. So exciting times are ahead. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.